I didn't even notice the rain until it soaked through my dress and clung to my skin like ice. My heels slapped against the pavement with every hurried step, but I didn't care where I was going. All I could hear was the echo of my own silence at that table. All I could feel was the weight of his silence beside me. My name is Claire Dawson, and tonight I realized the man I thought I loved may have never truly seen me at all. An hour ago, I was seated in a dining room that looked more like a museum than a home. The chandelier glared down on me as though it had been polished just to watch me squirm. Across the table, his mother's eyes traced every inch of me like a scanner. Her lips barely curling when she asked where I studied, how much I earned, whether my family owned property. Her questions weren't questions. They were verdicts. And Ethan sat there staring at his plate, not a word in my defense, not even a glance to reassure me. I remember clutching the napkin in my lap so tightly, I thought it would tear. Every polite smile I forced felt like another stitch unraveling inside me. I wanted him to look at me, to say something, anything to remind me I mattered. Instead, he laughed at one of his father's remarks as though I wasn't even there. That was the moment something inside me cracked. By dessert, my appetite was gone. I stood, excused myself with a smile that tasted like blood, and walked out before anyone could stop me. Except no one did, not even him. He just stayed murmuring to his father as if I had already vanished. Now here I am, rushing through the downpour, with my purse pressed to my chest like armor, my hair plastered against my face, wondering how a night that was supposed to mean everything turned into the moment I lost everything. I thought this dinner was the beginning of forever, maybe even a proposal. Instead, it feels like a curtain has been pulled back, exposing the truth I didn't want to see. The rain hides my tears, but it cannot hide the question pounding in my head. If the man I love cannot stand up for me when it matters most, then who exactly have I been loving all this time? The gates opened with a slow groan, revealing a mansion that looked like it had been carved out of a magazine spread. Columns framed the front, the kind you only see in movies, and a fountain glittered under the drizzle, like it had been ordered just to impress. My stomach clenched as I stepped out of the cab, rain sliding down my coat. I told myself to breathe, to hold my head high, to remember that I had every right to be here. Inside the foyer was so vast, it made me feel small instantly. Marble floors stretched out under my feet, and a chandelier spilled light over a staircase that seemed to wind on forever. A man in a suit, an actual butler, which I didn't even realize still existed, took my coat with the kind of polite indifference that said I was already out of place. Then Ethan appeared, descending the stairs, with that easy smile I had once trusted. "You made it," he said, brushing a kiss against my cheek, like nothing was wrong, like my nerves weren't twisting me inside out. For a moment, I wanted to believe it would be fine, that he would make this easier, that maybe his parents would surprise me. But the moment I stepped into the dining room, I knew I was wrong. His father rose halfway to greet me, tall and broad-shouldered, his handshake firm but hollow. "Miss Dawson," he said, like I was a name on a business card. His mother didn't rise at all. She looked me over with eyes sharp enough to cut, then offered a smile so thin it might have cracked. "Claire, is it?" she asked. "We've heard some things." My pulse jumped, but I smiled anyway. "Thank you for having me. Your home is beautiful." "Yes," she said, simply folding her napkin. Dinner began with chatter about weather investments, charity galas. I nodded, smiled, tried to add comments here and there. Each time silence fell, followed by a glance between them, the kind that said, "She doesn't belong here." Then came the questions. "So, Claire," his mother began, her fork clinking softly against porcelain. "You're a seamstress." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes. I design and alter dress, mostly bridal and evening wear. I'm hoping to expand into custom gowns soon." "How quaint," she murmured. "And where did you study?" "I attended a vocational college here in Columbus," I said. Her lips curved slightly, though it wasn't a smile. "Not a 4-year university." Then heat crept up my neck. "No, ma'am. I chose a shorter program so I could start working and helping my mom sooner." "Helping your mother?" His father cut in, brow arched. "Is she unwell?" I hesitated, then nodded. She has a heart condition. I live with her so I can be there when she needs me. His mother's eyes flicked toward Ethan, then back to me. How admirable, she said, the words landing like stones. More questions followed: whether I rented or owned my apartment, how many clients I had, whether I'd considered changing careers. None of it was curiosity. Every answer I gave only deepened the invisible line between their world and mine. And Ethan, he just sat there shifting uncomfortably, his eyes fixed on his plate. Not once did he look at me. Not once did he say, "She's amazing and I love her." His silence was louder than their questions. By the time dessert arrived, the knot in my stomach had hardened into something I couldn't swallow. I placed my napkin carefully on the table and forced a smile. "Thank you so much for dinner. I'm afraid I have an early morning at work." His mother didn't blink. "Of course, it was enlightening to meet you." I stood clutching my purse, waiting for Ethan to rise to follow, to say something. But he didn't move. He leaned toward his father, murmuring about some investment, as though I had already left. The butler appeared again, silent and efficient, guiding me back through the cavernous halls to the front door. I stepped outside, into the heavier rain, the night swallowing me whole. My heels clicked against the wet stone, but I barely heard them over the sound of my own heartbeat. I had imagined this night would be the start of forever. Instead, it felt like the end of something I hadn't even realized was breaking. And as I walked away from that mansion, rain pouring down my face, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe the silence at that table had been the loudest truth of all. When I finally left that mansion behind, the rain swallowed me whole, and all I could think about was getting home before my mother saw through me. Marianne Dawson. My mom had always been able to read me too easily. If I walked through that door with swollen eyes and a broken voice, she'd know. And the truth was, she had enough weight on her shoulders already, without carrying mine too. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of Columbus, a place where the paint peeled in spots and the heat rattled in the winter, but it was ours, or at least rented with pride. My mother decorated it with secondhand furniture and curtains. She sewed herself, giving it warmth money could never buy. She worked for years as an office assistant at an insurance firm, her paycheck stretched to cover bills and my school supplies. She was fragile in body, but strong in every other way that mattered. Her heart condition had been with her for as long as I could remember. When I was little, I didn't understand why she sometimes had to sit down halfway up the stairs, or why she pressed her hand to her chest after carrying groceries. By the time I was a teenager, I understood more than I wanted to. I knew every medication she took, every warning sign. And I knew the quiet fear that lived behind her smile, that one day her heart would give out before she was ready. She never let that fear stop her from giving me everything. She taught me how to sew on an old Singer machine when I was 9. The stitches were crooked, the fabric scraps uneven, but when I showed her the first little pouch I'd made, she clapped like it was couture. "Your hands are gentle, Claire," she told me. "That means you'll make something beautiful out of this world." That sentence planted something in me, something I chased all through high school and beyond. While other kids were at football games and parties, I worked evenings at a tiny alteration shop, saving what I could. I didn't have the money or grades for a prestigious design school, but I enrolled in a vocational program right after graduation. I wasn't aiming to become a fashion celebrity in New York. I wanted to create gowns that made real women feel beautiful on their most important days. That dream was enough. And when Ethan walked into my life at a charity event 2 years ago, I thought maybe the universe had finally rewarded me for holding on. He noticed me, listened when I spoke, made me feel like I wasn't just the girl behind the sewing machine. At least that's what I believed. But after that dinner, after his silence, the cracks spread too quickly to ignore. Still, I tried to hold myself together, especially for my mom. She didn't need to know that my heart had been broken alongside hers. A week later, it became impossible to hide anything. I woke up to the sound of her coughing in the kitchen. When I rushed in, she was sitting at the table, pale, one hand clutching her chest. "Mom." I knelt beside her, panic clawing at me. She tried to smile. "It's just a little dizziness. It passes." But it didn't pass. That afternoon, we were at the hospital, sitting across from a cardiologist, whose expression told me everything before he even spoke. Your mother's condition has worsened, he said gently. The medication is no longer effective. We need to consider surgery soon. Within weeks, ideally. My throat closed. How much will it cost? He hesitated, and that hesitation was enough to make my stomach drop. Somewhere in the range of $80,000 to $90,000. The room tilted. That number was more than I made in 3 years. There are assistance programs, he continued, but they take time, and time is not on our side. I'll give you a list of foundations, but I want you prepared for delays. I nodded, though my ears rang too loudly to hear much else. That night, I sat at our kitchen table long after my mom went to bed, staring at the list of phone numbers and websites the doctor had given me. I called them all in the days that followed. Some were kind but firm. We're not taking adult cases right now. Others didn't call back at all. One woman sighed and said, "Sweetheart, unless your mother's under 18 or there's some tragic accident, donors don't usually open their wallets." Her words cut deeper than any knife. Wasn't my mother's life tragic enough? Finally, out of desperation, I did the one thing I had sworn not to do. I called Ethan. He picked up quickly, his voice calm, almost casual. "Claire, didn't expect to hear from you." I explained everything, my mom's worsening condition, the surgery, the cost. My voice shook with every word. I thought maybe you could lend me something. Just until I figure it out. I'll pay you back every cent. There was silence, then a laugh so soft it made my blood run cold. "Claire, really? My mom warned me this might happen. She said if we ended things, you'd probably find some excuse to call." My chest burned. This isn't about me. It's about my mother's life. Yeah, well, I'm sorry she's sick, but I'm not a bank. Don't call me again, okay? The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, numb. In a single moment, the man I once thought I'd build a future with became nothing but an empty voice on the other end of the line. And for the first time, I realized I was standing on the edge of a cliff with no one there to catch me if I fell. 2 days after Ethan hung up on me, I found myself sitting on a cracked bench outside Mercy General, my head buried in my hands. The world around me moved on. Ambulances pulled up, families rushed through the sliding doors, but I felt frozen hollow, like the ground had been pulled out from under me. My mother was inside, going through pre-op testing even though we didn't know how the bill would ever be paid. I kept asking myself why life could be so cruel, why a person could work so hard, care so much, and still end up with nothing but walls closing in. I didn't notice the footsteps at first, only the gentle voice that followed. "Sweetheart, Claire, is that you?" I looked up, blinking through tears. Standing in front of me was a frail woman in a tan coat and knitted hat. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. Then it clicked, the bus ride. She was the woman I had given fare to when she was trying to reach her grandson at this very hospital. "Mrs. Howard," I whispered, startled. Her eyes softened as she reached for my hands. "I told you I'd remember you. And look at you now. Honey, you look like I did the day I lost my husband. What's wrong?" Embarrassment flushed through me. I didn't want pity, not from her, not from anyone. But her gaze was too kind to lie to. My voice cracked. "My mom, she needs heart surgery. They said soon or she won't make it. But I don't have the money. I don't know what to do." Mrs. Howard studied me for a moment, then sat down beside me on the bench as if she had all the time in the world. "You're the girl who gave me dignity when I had none. You didn't even hesitate. Do you think I could forget that?" Before I could answer, she turned and waved. "Daniel, over here." A tall man in his late 20s walked toward us, his stride steady, his expression curious but warm. He wore a simple jacket, nothing flashy, but there was something about the way he carried himself, calm, grounded, that made me sit up straighter. "Grandma?" he asked. "Who's this?" "This," she said proudly, "is the young woman I told you about. The one who helped me when I couldn't even pay for the bus, and now she needs help, Daniel. She needs it more than ever." My throat tightened. "Please, you don't owe me anything." I wasn't looking for. Daniel held up a hand, his gaze steady on mine. "Tell me what's going on." Something about his tone broke whatever wall I had left. The words spilled out my mom's worsening heart condition, the cost of the surgery, the failed calls to charities, Ethan's cruel dismissal. I didn't spare myself the humiliation. When I finished, my voice was raw and my hands were shaking. Daniel didn't flinch. "How much do you need?" Tears welled in my eyes. I can't ask you for money." "You're not asking," he said calmly. "I'm offering. My company's doing well. I can cover it." Shock stole my breath. It's too much. "I can't accept." Mrs. Howard placed a hand on mine. "You gave me back my pride that day on the bus. Now let us give you back your hope." Daniel leaned forward, his voice quiet but firm. "This isn't charity, Claire. Think of it as an investment, not just in your mom's health, but in you. You've worked too hard to give up now." The dam inside me finally broke. Tears streamed down my face, and for the first time in weeks, they weren't only from despair. "Why would you do this for me?" I asked softly. Daniel's expression softened. "Because kindness deserves to be paid forward. And because you remind me of someone my grandmother when she was younger. Quiet strength, even when life's unfair. People like you are rare." I covered my face with my hands, overwhelmed. For so long, I had felt invisible, disposable. And here, in the most unlikely place, two near strangers were holding me together with nothing but kindness. Daniel stood pulling out his phone. "I'll call the billing department and make arrangements. And when your mom's out of surgery, we'll talk about something else too." I looked up at him confused. "Something else?" He smiled. "You dream of designing bridal gowns, right? My grandma's told me enough. Once your mom's well, I want to help you make that dream real." The words hit me harder than the rain ever had. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of something more than survival. Hope. As we walked back inside the hospital together, I glanced at the storm outside and realized something I hadn't dared to believe until now. Maybe life breaks you, not to destroy you, but to show you who's really there to pick up the pieces. The morning of the surgery, I held my mother's hand as they wheeled her toward the operating room. Her fingers were thin cool against mine, but her grip was steady. "Don't let this scare you," she whispered. "Life has a way of turning pain into something beautiful. You just have to let it." I tried to smile, though my eyes burned. "I'm not scared, Mom. Not anymore." But the truth was, I'd never been so terrified. The hours crawled by in the waiting room. Every time a nurse walked through the doors, my heart jumped. Daniel and Mrs. Howard sat with me, keeping me from unraveling completely. He brought me coffee, told me stories about his first engineering project that nearly exploded anything to keep me breathing. Still, every minute felt like a lifetime. After 6 endless hours, the surgeon appeared, pulling down his mask with a tired smile. "It went perfectly. She's stable. With recovery and care, her prognosis is excellent." Relief crashed over me so hard I nearly collapsed. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered thank you again and again to the doctor, to Daniel, to the universe. For the first time in months, the weight on my chest lifted. But the world has a cruel way of testing you, even in moments of peace. I stepped out into the hospital corridor for air, only to hear a voice I thought I'd left behind. "Claire, Ethan." He stood there in a tailored suit, looking polished, contrite. For a moment, I couldn't move. "I heard about your mom," he said quietly. I shouldn't have hung up. I panicked. "I want to help now if you'll let me." Something inside me snapped, but not in the way it used to. I didn't feel desperate anymore. I didn't need his help. I stepped closer, my voice low but steady. "You had your chance, Ethan. When I needed you most, you turned your back. And now it's too late. I don't need you." His jaw tightened as though he wanted to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. I walked past him, my chest lighter with every step. For the first time, his silence no longer hurt. It only confirmed what I had already learned: real love doesn't disappear when things get hard. Inside, my mom was alive. Daniel and his grandmother were waiting. And for the first time in a long time, so was my future. Months slipped by in a blur of recovery and rebuilding. My mother grew stronger each week, her color returning, her laughter filling our apartment again. Every milestone, walking a little farther, breathing a little easier, felt like a miracle. True to his word, Daniel didn't vanish after writing a check. He visited often, bringing flowers for Mom and sketches for me, pushing me to believe in my own designs. With his support and more courage than I knew I had, I opened a small bridal studio downtown. Dawson Bridal. The name glowed on the front window like a promise kept. On opening day, my mother stood beside me, tears in her eyes, while Mrs. Howard cut the ribbon with a grin. Daniel was there too, clapping the loudest, his smile steady and sure. Clients trickled in, and soon I was fitting gowns for women who wanted to feel beautiful again. One afternoon, a bride-to-be looked at herself in the mirror, wearing a dress I had made, and whispered, "I feel like myself again." Her words stayed with me, because that's exactly what I had found too. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't end your story. Sometimes it clears the path for the life you were meant to live. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.